It was a stinging judgment by the Supreme Court, one that will probably go down in history books. The top court has pulled up the central government over its decision to ban Malayalam news channel mediaone, that is often critical of the government. The channel had been taken off air in January 2022. Why? National security reasons, according to the Government of India. Not only has the Supreme Court today lifted that ban on mediaone, there was also some scathing criticism that came in for the centre. We can actually split this judgment into two parts. One is about freedom of press and the government's obsession with national security concerns, real or fake. The second is about sealed cover reports. Let's first talk about the first part. The court today said that critical views of a media organization cannot be termed anti-establishment. In other words, anti-government is not anti-national. I'm going to repeat it because this is something important that the Supreme Court has said. It has said anti-government is not anti-national, that the government is not the nation. It also said that an independent press is necessary for a robust democracy. Next, the court addressed the so-called national security concerns. It said that national security claims cannot be made out of thin air, quote unquote. These are the exact words the Supreme Court has used. Let me repeat that. The Supreme Court has said that national security claims cannot be made out of thin air. They must be backed by material evidence and robust arguments. In this case, the court held that national security claims were raised in a cavalier manner. It also said that such claims cannot be used to deny citizens. The channel mediaone, based in Kerala, was critical of the government's CAA and NRC moves, and that had prompted the INB ministry to take it off. These are the claims of the channel. Today, we saw a damning indictment of the central government on all counts. Now, let's talk about the sealed cover part. What exactly are these sealed covers? Well, it refers to confidential information that is handed over to the court in sealed envelopes. Unlike other details of the case, this is not available in public domain. Neither the involved parties nor the people can know what is inside a sealed cover. Only the judges can read it. But why use these sealed covers in the first place? It is usually done to maintain public order, protect the privacy of certain people, or to prevent harm to national security. Question is, how is national security involved in taking off mediaone from air? It's a question that the Supreme Court has asked. Now, sealed covers have been used in a number of cases, like the Rafale jet case, the Bhima Koregaon case, the Modi biopic case, the Assam NRC case, the electoral bond case, and sexual harassment cases involving former Chief Justice Ranjan Gogoi. But recently, the top court has rejected these sealed covers. Like in the one rank, one pension case and the Adani Hindenburg row, the centre suggested that sealed covers, but the top court said nothing doing. Now, in today's judgment, we saw an extension of that sentiment. The court said that all investigations cannot be considered secret and that sealed covers infringe principles of natural and open justice. It also said that such sealed covers violate the right to fair and reasonable proceedings. For example, if I'm fighting a case and the government gives something to the Supreme Court in a sealed cover, how do I argue against that when I don't even know what is inside these sealed covers? So you're not even giving me a chance to argue my case because I don't know the argument that the government is making. So going forward, the Supreme Court has spelled out a procedure that parties must first convince the court why a sealed cover is necessary. Only then will it be accepted. Now, coming back to mediaone status. The Supreme Court has lifted the ban imposed last year. It has asked the INB ministry to issue the license within 4 weeks. But like I said, this judgment goes beyond just one channel and a ban. It's a comprehensive defense of free press and a big blow to the continued equation of the government with the nation. Because sometimes criticizing your government is the biggest expression of nationalism. When you hold a mirror to your government, you're a patriot. You're not a traitor. Asking questions doesn't make you a traitor. It can make you anti-government. It certainly doesn't make you anti-national. I'm going across to my guest this evening. We are going to have a quick, short discussion on the subject. Colin Gonsalves is a senior advocate of the Supreme Court. He's joining us on the broadcast. And Madhavan Narayanan is a senior journalist. He's joining us on the broadcast as well. Colin Gonsalves, I want to ask you, given the milieu that we live in, given the times that we live in, why is today's judgment so important? Why are the Supreme Court's observations, they're not extraordinary, but the very fact that they have been made in the times we live in make them important?
I think you summed up the answer to that question very beautifully in your introductory remarks. It is very important for the media to know that merely because they make a trenchant criticism of the central government, they cannot be punished. They cannot be taken in UAPA terrorism cases, as has happened in this country, and they cannot be taken in sedition. Free speech is fundamentally affirmed in this judgment. And in Rangarajan's case, the Supreme Court went to the extent of saying even speech hateful of the government is protected by free speech. Only that it is not protected where you incite people to violence and violence actually takes place. So for the media, this is a very happy day, and it's a judgment articulated very beautifully. And I'm proud of our Supreme Court that they stood up for free speech. But as you mentioned, judgment has repercussions, quite important repercussions, far, far beyond media, into all cases that are today in the press on terrorism. Activists, student activists, whose only guilt was that they stood up to government and criticized government policies fearlessly. Some criticized CAA, some criticized the NRC, some criticized sedition law and the misuse of sedition law. So criticism by activists have led to activists, students studying for their MA and PhDs, rotting in jail for year after year. Why? They stood up to a despotic government, just like the British. Anyone who said anything against the British power was put in jail. Now this judgment will come to the aid of all these people. You remember Khalid's case, where I think the High Court recently held, he gave a very provocative speech. So what? Provocative is not incitement to violence. It was provocative in the sense that he criticized politicians at the highest level of government and the policies of government. So I'm very happy. I hope this comes to the aid of all young people in India who are fighting a very courageous battle for genuine freedom in India.
Madhavan Narayanan, but what does this change for the media landscape in India? I ask you this question. I mean, what do you see happening after today? Do you see the media being braver and criticizing the Modi government without being called traitors? Do you see more investigative reports? Because, it's all very well for the Supreme Court to have said what it did. Again, as I said, it's not extraordinary, but in the times that we live in, someone had to say it, and we are glad that the Supreme Court has said it. But what changes for the media? Because, the Supreme Court can say what it wants to say. If a media channel is critical of the government, maybe the license will not be taken away this time, but there could be raids. We've seen that in many, many cases. I have three pages worth of details where I can count for you every time a media house has been critical of the government, there have been raids. In Media One's case, yes, maybe the license was taken away, but there are other tools with which the government can harass a media house.
You asking me, Shreya, or is it? Hello,
Yes,
is
yes,
that
Mr.
question
Narayan.
for
Yes,
me?
yes.
Ah, well, Shreya, first of all, I must say that today is a momentous day for a peculiar reason, which is that the United States has its first amendment that explicitly protects the freedom of the press, including by a law of the Congress, which is the US Parliament. So, in the absence of any such amendment or legal provision in India, a momentous Supreme Court judgment will act as an important precedent, just as we have a ruling on the basic structure of the Constitution. This is akin to that. In that sense, it is a very important one. But having said that, you referred to raids and other things, and if you see the history of press in India, everything from the newsprint control policies to even the fact that licensing must exist for TV channels in the age of a smartphone and social media, it itself is a travesty and an anachronism, and that itself is an irony that we have to address. But all we know from today's ruling is that some kind of a legal approach to controlling media by citing some law uh, can be countered by any reasonably brave media company because law enforcement agencies have been, as I've been saying, weaponized to a certain extent. And the Indian Penal Code remains a colonial heritage which basically runs in the face of a constitution which is republican and democratic. So we have a strange beast in which the IPC is colonial substantially, and the law enforcement agencies have a colonial or feudal era styles of functioning. At the same time, the constitution is modern, free, and robustly democratic. Therefore, the Supreme Court is where the contradictions are being resolved, and to that extent, the media will be empowered. And most important of all, I just was doing some homework and I found that it was on 7th of April, 1775, that Samuel Johnson came out with the statement, patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. And he was, of course, talking about the Patriot Party, which has now been equated with patriotism or abuse of patriotism in general. And we have to ask whether national security and sealed covers have been used to cloak any accountability to the people, which is what Republican democratic behavior is all about, where we are not subjects, we are citizens. So when I call it the subject-citizen dichotomy in politics, where some parties of extreme left and extreme right tend to treat citizens as if they were subjects of the pre-democratic era and want everybody to be obedient, and that includes the media. So today's ruling is significant because it will help us establish through a proper, informed, constitutionally competent Supreme Court to throw the book at you. This is not the end of, obviously, attacks on media, because even 2 years ago, the UK was seeing the potential abuse of the Official Secrets Act to jail journalists. Therefore, this is, we are seeing what's happening in the US today with the arrest of Trump, where he's brazen in some ways about what is going on. So democracies are, ultimately that old saying, eternal vigilance is the price of democracy. Liberty remains valid. But every time a certain ruling of this kind comes, of the kind that Justice Chandrachud and Hima Kohli have delivered, it gives us the confidence that we have something to wave at people who use flimsy excuses. They may be waving sealed covers, they may be waving some outdated colonial era.
That we have the backing of the law.
Yeah, not just law. In fact, I want to use the word.
If we have to do an honest job as journalists, we can do it because we have the backing of the law.
I want to add one more point, Shreya. The word law is being appropriated by local policemen these days. The word is the Constitution. The Constitution stands even above ordinary laws, which are supposed to be creatures of the Constitution. So, in casual socio-linguistic terms, law is being equated with a local cop, and that has to stop. And to that extent, I completely agree that today's this thing would serve as a ruling will serve as a precedent.
Colin Gonsalves, it's easy to blame the central government for the excesses on the media. It's very easy to blame them because that's very visible. We've seen that with the BBC raids. But here I have a list. Asianet was raided in Kerala. We know it is not a channel which is exactly complementary to the ruling dispensation, which is why they were raided. Again, in Tamil Nadu, you have journalists being arrested one after the other. So, the problem of media excesses or trying to control the media exists not just with the central government, but even opposition rule states who are very quick to criticize the BJP when it comes to press freedom. But Colin Gonsalves, as a Supreme Court, advocate, I want to ask you about this entire sealed cover business and national security business. To me, it's baffling that the matter had actually, before the Supreme Court, gone to the Kerala High Court as is procedure. And the Kerala High Court had upheld the government's ban.
Yes, well, the seal cover procedure was long overdue for overhauling. It was such a rotten procedure, and I personally, suffered this procedure in courts where you're arguing on the basis of open documents that I produce in court. And all of a sudden, a government officer will come up as if it's his God-given right and then say, we are handing you something in a sealed cover. And I was dead sure that what they were handing over to the court was utter rubbish or government biased documents or pure lies, maybe even. So we suffered this for so many years until I'm really so overjoyed today to know that the Supreme Court has said enough is enough. Stop this nonsense of giving us things in sealed covers. And I was in court when the court's the judges remarked in many cases, no more sealed cover documents. Either you give it to the other side or don't give it to us. We're not interested in anything in a sealed cover. So you're right, it puts an end to decades, I would say, of tyranny by government officers who took the shortcut of lying to the court in sealed cover. Because who would point out that what was supplied was a lie? If I don't see the document, how would I know that what they're telling the court is a blatant lie?
So, today what we've seen is a comprehensive defense of free speech and a comprehensive indictment, I would say, of sealed covers. We leave it there. It's a momentous day today. How much will it change things on the ground? We do not know. Will it encourage the press to become a little more braver, criticize governments, not just the central government, but state governments as well, because the protection will come in for everyone, every journalist who works in this country, every media house that operates in this country. Let's see how this works out. But a big day indeed. Colin Gonsalves, thank you very much for joining us. Madhavan Narayanan, good to have you on the show as well. Thank you very much. Now, this wasn't the only news from the Supreme Court. If what we saw in the previous story was a stinger for the central government, today there was a big setback for the opposition as well from the Supreme Court. The top court today junked a petition filed by 14 political parties alleging that central investigating agencies were being weaponized by the central government to clamp down on opposition leaders. The top court today refused to entertain the plea and asked how politicians can ask for special treatment and more immunity than ordinary citizens. The Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, also added that the answer lay in the political space and not in court. The opposition has been alleging that central agencies are being controlled directly by the ruling government and sought an application of a triple test for arrests and remands. Needless to say, the government is upbeat about the Supreme Court's decision, while the opposition isn't. Listen in.
विपक्ष के कुछ राजनीतिक दल भ्रष्टाचार करने से तो बाज आते नहीं। करोड़ों रुपए का भ्रष्टाचार करने के बाद जब जांच शुरू होती है तो कभी सड़कों पर उतरते हैं, कभी सदन रोकने का काम करते हैं। सभी भ्रष्टाचारी एक मंच पर आने का प्रयास करते हैं, लेकिन ये जनता में भी इनका चेहरा बेनकाब हुआ है और कोर्ट में भी असलियत जानने का मौका मिला है।
सर्वोच्च न्यायालय ने जब इस याचिका को निरस्त किया, रद्द किया, तो एक बात स्पष्ट हो गई कि जो बात विपक्षी दल, ये सारे प्रथम दृष्टया भ्रष्टाचारी नेता चीख चीख के कहते हैं, उसमें सच्चाई नहीं है, बल्कि सीबीआई, ईडी, जो भी जांच एजेंसी है, वो अपना काम न्याय संगत तरीके से, कानूनी तरीके से, संविधान के तहत कर रही है।
They ultimately did not entertain it, but did not express a single opinion on the merits. They allowed the matter to be withdrawn. They recorded that it's at this stage, which means that full liberty is there for us to come again on new facets, new grounds. The building blocks were felt to be too broad by the court at this stage. They involved an allegation of non-level, uneven playing field, because 95% of all cases involve opposition leaders as far as the political sphere is concerned. That, according to us, skews democracy, makes democracy one-sided and lopsided, and that in turn affects negatively basic structure. The court felt that in individual cases we are here to save you, to protect you, to deal with you, but in a mega macro sense, we are not entertaining this at this stage.
Issues relating to the excesses or abuse of powers by central agencies is a matter of concern for the past quite some time. It is a matter of debate, not among the opposition leaders alone, but even nationwide. We are finding that common people also make grievance that CBI and ED are working selectively and are abusing their power.
Abhishek Manu Sanghvi of the Congress Party was the one arguing the case on behalf of the opposition parties. Given the way the Supreme Court reacted to the petition and the plea, he thought it wise to withdraw that petition because the court was in a full mood to dismiss it, and that would have been humiliating for the opposition. But in any case, a bad day for the opposition in the Supreme Court. With that, I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. We are getting you our special segment from Karnataka. There's been a big development in the political landscape of the election-bound state. That's what we are talking about next. Do stay with us.